Welcome to New South Wales Family Daycare Association's PD in Your Pocket program. This episode is presented by the New South Wales Family Daycare Association and Peak Training. The topic for this month is Understanding the New Regulatory Reforms in Family Daycare. This is a recording of the webinar presentation on the 25th of August, 2026, and was presented by Elizabeth Goh.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's session. I can see everybody coming in, lots of hellos. Lovely to have you with us tonight. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm your facilitator for this evening. Welcome to New South Wales Family Daycare and Peak Training PD in Your Pocket series. Tonight, we are looking at understanding the new legislative reforms in family daycare. So as I mentioned, my name's Elizabeth. I've done lots of PD in Your Pockets before, but I've had a little break, so I'm very excited to be back with you this evening. I would like to do an acknowledgement of country. So before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country on which we meet today. And I know that we're on many different lands when we come together on these online sessions, but I'm currently presenting from the land of the Wallumedegal people, belonging to the Darug Nation, and I would like to acknowledge them and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I acknowledge that Aboriginal families have cared and educated for children on this land for tens of thousands of years. Okay, so as you can see on our screen here, this is our booklet for tonight's session. This booklet is funded by the New South Wales Family Daycare Association in partnership with Peak Training, and hopefully you have received and had some time to read this booklet prior to tonight. The link was sent in the email if you registered before today. If you didn't receive it, you can easily find it on the link on the screen there. If you go to our PD in Your Pocket page, you can download not only this booklet, but of all the past sessions as well. You can see we're up to our 57th session, which is just amazing. So also a reminder about the survey that you will be sent after the session. If you can please take a moment to fill in the survey, as this helps get the necessary information out to you to find out what's important to you, how you enjoyed the session. We would greatly appreciate it. And of course, you will receive a certificate of participation for tonight. So your certificates will be emailed to you over the next week. Make sure you check your junk because they sometimes do end up in there. And if any issues, you can always email us and we will happily sort that out for you. So a lot of the content that we'll be going through tonight, you'll be able to keep once you've downloaded that booklet. Okay, before we get started on our main content for tonight, you may remember that we asked some questions when you registered for this session, and this is what we learned from you. So we're going to go through those questions and all your responses. We've now compiled that data, and I think it's quite important that we share that tonight to see where we're all sitting. So the first question we asked you was, how confident are you currently feeling with the new and current ECEC regulatory reforms? So 7% of you said not at all confident, 48% said somewhat confident, 34% were mostly confident, and we've got 11% with us tonight who are very confident, so that's great to hear. But just keeping in mind that the aim of tonight's session is that hopefully you all leave feeling a lot more confident about these reforms and you get a really good overview of what's currently happening. The next question we asked you is, how do you usually stay informed about regulatory or legislative changes in the sector? 62% of you said through family daycare service communications, 11% said through PD and webinars, 17% said through regulatory authority updates, 3% use social media or online groups, and 7% are networking through colleagues and other networks. The next question was, how aligned do you believe your current family daycare practices are with the requirements and the expectations outlined in the new ECEC legislative reforms? So 44% felt fully aligned. 42% said mostly aligned, 6% said partially, 2% said minimally aligned, and 6% were unsure. So the aim of this evening would be, hopefully we see a lot more of you after getting a lot of information and context tonight, making sure that your practices are really aligned. Your current practices are aligned with the reform requirements. And then the last question we asked was, how supported do you currently feel by your approved provider or your management team within the implementation of the new reforms? And it was great to see 61% of you were feeling very supported, 28% mostly, 8 were neutral, somewhat supported with 2% of you, and only 1% of you felt that you were lacking support. So that was quite a good outcome for that question. And it could be that we've got some approved providers or people in management teams with us this evening. And it may be a case that you yourself are coming tonight to get some further information, and you can then better support your team of educators. So we're going to dive into the main content of tonight's session. This webinar is really here to guide you through the latest legislative reforms and unpack what they look like in a family daycare setting. So we're going to explore key regulatory changes, implementation timelines, compliance expectations, all of those really important topics. So this session will offer really practical insight as well into how to have high quality decision making, influence your day-to-day practice, and also looking at some really great documentation that's out there now as well. We also have a fantastic interview to share. That is with Deb Philpott, an family daycare coordinator and secondary nominated supervisor from Lake Macquarie Family Daycare. So very grateful for Deb's time, and we will be watching that interview at the end of tonight's session. Okay, so I guess a really good place to start is an overview of these reforms and the agenda. So New South Wales has passed the Children Amendments Act in 2005 to strengthen child safety and wellbeing in ECEC settings, including family daycare. Now, the Act fast tracks and explains national reforms and responds to findings from the independent review of early childhood regulation. It introduces more than 30 reforms that will roll out over time. The latest are from that large rollout that we saw on the 24th of April of this year, 2026, and the next tranche is coming very soon. So some changes require actions from providers and family daycare services, while others just clarify obligations or strengthen enforcement powers to better protect children's safety, well-being and rights. Now, the New South Wales Early Learning Commission will continue to provide guidance and resources. I'm going to guide you of where you can find a lot of those things tonight. So as I go through the slides, you'll be able to see links to particular documentation, sample templates, lots of useful tools for you to use. So there's so much information tonight. It may be a bit of information overload. So make sure you keep going back to the booklet that we've provided you, which provides a great summary of everything. And then also reaching out to those links that we talk about tonight to download those documents. Just a reminder of the three key National Quality Framework updates that came into place at the end of last year, September 2025. That's when we really saw a lot around the services having policies for digital technologies and online environments. We saw notification timeframes for allegations or incidents of physical or sexual abuse reduced from 7 days to 24 hours. And then we also saw services must ensure environments are free from the use of vaping substances and devices. So those were those key changes in September 2025. And we looked a lot at National Model Code. So that's just a recap. But tonight we're really going to be focusing on the changes that commenced in April of this year. Another thing that would be good for us to quickly recap and have a look at is our safe sleep requirements. So having a look at the slide here, making sure that you're aware of the regulations, the links to the national quality standards. So the safe sleep and rest reforms, making sure family educators understand that they must follow sleep checks, documentation for all sleeping children in their FDC environments. Obviously being very aware of environmental hazards, doing our risk assessments, and following your services sleep and rest policy, which links to Regulation 168, and making sure we complete mandatory safe sleep training. So communicating with families about sleep preferences and routines. So we ran a really comprehensive safe sleep refresher in September 2025. Again, that was one of our PD Pocket sessions. So you can still view the recording or go back to the booklet on our PD Pocket website and revisit that if you feel that you need another refresher on that. And keeping in mind, Red Nose is always your go-to source of current information and practice. And the link is there to our PD in Your Pocket Safe Sleep Refresher. Okay, so let's now go into looking at those April 2026 reforms. So we've broken it up into different areas because there was so much that got updated or introduced that it's important that we look at it in different areas. So as I go through the slides, you'll see that I've broken it up into different areas of practice. So the first one we're looking at tonight is incident, injury, trauma, and illness. Okay, and the big change that came out of that was that our incident, injury, trauma, and illness records must now also include the name and signature of the person who gave or attempted to give notice of the incident under updates to Regulation 87. So this aims to support accountability and ensure a clear record of how incidents are reported or managed. So as you can see there, we've got our links to our regulations and our NQS. So family daycare educators must document all incidents involving children or household members using the incident, illness, accident, trauma reporting form. The name of the person who contacted or attempted, excuse me, to contact parents, signature of that person, evidence of parent contact within 24 hours of the incident. And as I mentioned, this is really to strengthen accountability and ensure a clear, transparent record of how that was managed. When we look at how disclosures are made, so clear reporting pathways, investigating documentation timeframes, how educators are protected. So your responsibilities from your service are they need to make sure that confidentiality is maintained and that you are supported as an educator. Another big thing that we saw come out of the April reforms was under Regulation 118. there was some changes as to how the role of the educational leader is managed. So educational leaders must accept the position in writing. They must understand the obligations of an educational leader. So, a record must be kept of the role description for the educational leader that outlines expectations and parameters of the role. So, lots of clarity and transparency around what they are responsible for. We need to have a resume on file for the educational leader, qualifications, and a written acceptance from them. So the educational leader must accept that role in writing. And again, this supports clarity and accountability by ensuring that educational leaders are formally aware of their responsibilities to lead the development and implementation of educational programs in the service. This is a fantastic resource that's provided by ASEQA. So you can download this from the ASEQA website, and it's the Educational Leader Resource. So a great document there if that's a role that you're looking at taking or that you're currently in. This is a great supporting document. Okay, and something that you're probably all very familiar with by now is the wonderful paramountcy principle. So, Regulation 168 relates to all policies and procedures must now include the paramountcy principle. So, this requires services to demonstrate that child safety is paramount in all decisions, and it applies to all family daycare practices, documentation, and policies. So, all family daycare decisions must show that children come first. That is the absolute crux of our paramountcy principle. Children must come first, and that the paramountcy principle is embedded in everyday practice. So, we need to demonstrate child first decision making in supervision, environment setup, routines, interactions, and show documented evidence in daily records, communication logs, and risk assessments. So, regulators will expect to see practical examples of child first decisions. And evidence must be consistent across monitoring visits, documentation, and educator practice. So, it needs to be a very visible thing within your service. And I invite you now, if you like, you can make some comments to everyone in the chat about how paramountcy principle is embedded at your service. So having a think and a reflection about what you're currently doing to achieve this requirement, and keeping in mind that all policies and procedures must include the paramountcy principle. So, in the context of early childhood education and care, the paramountcy principle means that the safety, well-being, and best interests of the child comes first in every decision a family daycare educator makes. So, this principle is reflected in the educator's daily practice, even when it may be inconvenient for adults. And that's a really interesting point, that sometimes we're very aware of our own needs and what's going to work best for us or what might make our life a little bit easier as an educator. But we need to start flipping that and having a think about the perspective of the child. Okay, so here are some examples that we can sometimes see where we need to prioritize the child's well-being or the child's needs before our own or before the services. So an example might be prioritizing a child's safety over a parent's request. And I'm sure this happens all the time. So a parent asking the educator to let someone not listed as an authorized nominee collect their child just as a one-off, but the educator refuses until the proper authorization is provided, and that links directly to the child's safety. Another example that we see all the time is following safe sleep practices. So you may get a request from a family member who has asked to put their baby to sleep with a blanket or a pillow because that's what they do at home, but the educator knows to follow safe sleep guidelines instead and ensuring the sleep environment meets current safety requirements in line with red nose and remove any hazards from the cot. Another example that we see quite often, a parent wanting to leave a child who has a high fever or is clearly unwell so that they can attend work, and the educator follows the service's illness and exclusion policies and makes sure that their unwell child is sent home or is not let into the service for the well-being of all the other children. Another example is supporting inclusion. So, an educator adapts activities so that a child with additional needs can participate alongside other children and that all children have equitable opportunities to learn and belong. I could see a lot of people in the chat are talking about respecting children's voice, which is fantastic. When planning activities, the educator considers the children's interests and choice, asking them about their opinions, their preferences, and trying to embed that into the program as much as possible. And some other examples there, maintaining confidentiality, so really embracing that respect of the child and the dignity of the child. It could be as simple as something as, making sure that they have appropriate privacy when toileting, or if they've had an accident, to take them inside to get changed, not in full view of other children. And another one could be supporting emotional well-being. So if a child comes in really distressed during drop-off, the educator provides comfort and reassurance, and doesn't dismiss that child's feelings and emotions. So there's some really practical examples of what the paramountcy principle looks like in practice. So to simplify paramountcy principle, just remember children first always. How is this going to, so every time you go to make a new decision or make a change or bring in something new, how is this going to impact the children and am I prioritizing their best interests? So all decision making, policies that reflect children's interests override any provider interests or conflicts of interest. Risk assessments prioritize safety, and the leadership team can demonstrate how the principle guides things like risk assessments, staffing decisions, and incident responses. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is understanding of child protection law. So from the April reforms under changes to Regulation 84, approved providers are required to ensure all staff working with children, and that includes volunteers and students, understand child protection law, not just be aware of it. So approved providers must ensure that staff members, nominated supervisors, and volunteers have an understanding of this and have met this obligation by being able to clearly explain their obligations as a mandatory reporter. So if even someone was to come in and ask, what is your role as a mandatory reporter? They clearly know what steps to take. The circumstances which would require them to make a report and how to submit a report. So, as family daycare educators, it's very important that you remember that you yourself, as an individual, are the mandatory reporter. So, not to be solely dependent on passing it on to your supervisor or manager. If you have concerns, you must understand what steps to take, and what you need to do to report. Something else there on the screen that I really want to point out is that speak up culture. So you have regular training and awareness sessions. You promote understanding of protections available to reporters. So we'll talk in a little while about whistleblower protection. And making sure that you've got all the necessary documents. And I've got some examples here. So here we have the Register of Child Protection Concerns, a really important document that was introduced. And at a minimum, this register must record all child safety and child protection reports made to either the OCG or Department of Communities and Justice, DCJ, the Early Learning Commission, or the New South Wales Police. So this is like, think of it as an overall record, a running record of any reports that were made. And it can also include notifications made in relation to serious incidents, inappropriate conduct, and negative notices. So remember when making your reports to the various agencies to ensure you receive a reference number, because best practice is to use that use that reference number in this register. So you would have an overview of any reports made and you would include the register number. So to strengthen child safety and child protection practices, support timely responses, and enable effective pattern spotting or trend monitoring. So the best thing about these registers is when we're documenting all of our things in the one spot, that's where we can start picking up patterns or trends. And the services are encouraged to also record any concerns about a child that may not meet the threshold for mandatory reporting. So for an example, if you got a response from the MRG that said just continue the relationship, continue to monitor, it might not meet the threshold to report to the Child Protection Helpline straight away. The best thing to do would be to put it in this register, because that's what we would call a concern that doesn't meet the threshold, but at least you've documented it somewhere. Because if you keep getting those continual records of one particular child, that's when we can see a pattern happening. And that also provides really important data. So the service's child safe environments policy and procedures should clearly outline responsibilities for maintaining, storing, and reviewing the register to ensure confidentiality and accountability, and that any trends or patterns of behaviour evident in the register are identified and addressed. So this isn't something that we just fill in and leave in the filing cabinet. It's something that we constantly need to review and revise. So while the specific format of the register may vary between services, this one here that I've got on the slide from the Early Learning Commission is just a template. You can adapt it to whatever works best for your service. Just make sure that if you are adapting it, it must include, the register really needs to include the date a concern was raised, a brief description of the concern or incident, the persons involved, so child, staff, managers, parents, any action taken or decisions made, including reporting steps, and that's where you would put your reference number for any reports, and any mandatory notification or reporting reference numbers, and details of any reviews or closure of the matter. So it kind of needs to have an outcome, or if it's just still pending or ongoing, that's fine as well. So the services, policies and procedures should clearly outline responsibilities for maintaining, storing and reviewing the register to ensure confidentiality and accountability. Now, a staff member or a volunteer at an early childhood service or a family daycare educator must not subject any child being educated and cared for to inappropriate conduct. So this next slide is looking all at managing allegations, misconduct, and reportable conduct. So significant financial penalties apply for breaching this law. Individuals face fines of up to $34,000 and approved providers face penalties of up to $500,000, depending on the size and structure of the organisation. So some examples are ill treatment that is not disciplinary in nature, including physical or verbal abuse, threats, yelling, swearing, rough handling, or any other conduct that may cause emotional or psychological harm. It also includes unprofessional communication, so in-person conversations, sending personal messages, capturing or sharing images of children via unauthorized devices or platforms. We know now we have to be very mindful of using personal devices for photography, that model code, and engaging with children online through social media or apps unrelated to your role. Now, allegations may involve educators or household members, visitors, or coordination unit staff, and services must have clear processes for reporting. When we look at the regulation and law, we also look at 167 of the National Law, Protection from Harm and Hazard, and it's Child Safe Standard 5. People who work with children are suitable and supported. So strengthen requirements for managing allegations and misconduct and reportable conduct in family daycare environments. So we need to demonstrate compliance within Child Safe Standard 5 and ensure all people working with children are suitable. And that may include right from their staff recruitment point and then ongoing monitoring and incident response systems. So it really does start at recruiting. So if you observe, suspect, or receive any allegations or disclosures that a staff member or volunteer is engaging or has engaged in inappropriate conduct, you must notify the New South Wales Early Learning Commission, which is the independent regulator for ECEC in New South Wales. Approved providers can make that report via the NQ8s. And ECEC service leaders, staff, parents, or carers who want to report incidents, suspicions, allegations, or disclosures of inappropriate conduct can contact the New South Wales Early Learning Information and Inquiries team, and their phone number and email is up on the screen there. So it would be really important for those details to be on display and available for your families. They need to know who they can report to if they have concerns. Another great fact sheet there, responding to incidents, disclosures, and suspicions of child abuse. That's from the New South Wales Department of Education. So you can download that from the Department of Education website. Now, inappropriate conduct is considered a serious incident and requires immediate attention. So it must be reported as soon as practical but within 24 hours of the incident or within 24 hours of becoming aware of the incident. We understand that you're not always aware straight away, but from 24 hours of becoming aware, you must report. And your service policies and procedures should really support you in knowing what channels to go through. Okay, in April, we also saw an update to our record of attendance. That's very important to note. Attendance records and daily accountability. Services must ensure robust daily practices for maintaining accurate attendance records under Regulation 158 and 159. This includes monitoring sign-in and sign-out procedures and implementing systems to confirm that all children are accounted for throughout the day. So policy should describe how staff will verify children's whereabouts during transitions, routines, and emergency situations. So it's not enough just to mark their attendance being signed in and signed out. We need to show how we're accountable throughout the day, especially if we're engaging in anything like excursions or changing environments. It's very important that we stay on top of that. So a few details to support us in that. Family daycare educators must maintain accurate sign in and sign out when children arrive and leave the residence. They also need to record exact arrival and departure times and making sure that an authorised adult is signing in and out. No pre-filled times or no retrospective editing without explanations. Records must reflect actual time that the children are present. Regular checks of attendance records, so ensuring educators maintain compliant documentation. Clear, accurate records, evidence of authorised signatures, attendance data, ratios, and incident records. I've also got some details here, prescribed information to be displayed, and this is specifically for family daycare. This relates to Regulation 173, sets out mandatory information that must be clearly displayed, and that includes the name of the approved provider, provider approval number, and any conditions on the provider approval, the name of the family daycare service, the service approval number and any conditions, name of each nominated supervisor, the current rating level for each NQS quality area. So not just your overall rating, you need each quality area, as well as your overall service rating, and any suspended or revoked ratings must also be displayed. Details of service waivers or temporary waivers, regulations waived during duration of waiver, and the type of waiver. Additional information also hours and days of operation for each family daycare office, including the name and the phone number for complaints, the name of the educational leader, the contact details of the regulatory authority. So that's so that families know who they can contact. Hours and days of operation. And another important addition is a diagram of approved areas for residents. So diagram of approved venue layout, child at risk of anaphylaxis enrolled or attending, infectious disease occurrences. So these all need to be displayed. If you've had any infectious diseases occurring, it needs to be displayed, and any children at risk of anaphylaxis. Information must be clearly visible from the main entrance of each family daycare office, each residence, and each approved venue. It must display rating information, so certificate issued by the regulatory authority. And lastly, information must be current, accurate, and prominently displayed. Diagrams must be clear and match approved areas. Notices must be updated immediately when there's any change. So again, if anyone would like to share ways in which you display this information and whereabouts in your home it's displayed, we would love to hear that. And don't forget, we've got our closed PD in Your Pocket Facebook group, so you're very welcome to join that. And that's also a great space where we can all come together and share our current practices. But if you've got any really great ideas about displaying, because it is a lot of information that we now have to have on display, and in a really prominent area, in a good thoroughfare area. So lots of people are saying at the entry, fantastic. Okay, policies and procedures. So some updates to policies and procedures. And again, a lot of these things you may have already been doing before the reforms in April, and that's fantastic. But it's a great time to check in and making sure that you are up to date, because there were so many reforms released at once and a lot of changes and additions. It's easy to let things slip, or you feel that you've actioned everything, but then you might hear something that you haven't quite put into practice yet. So it's a great reminder and a great overview. And all this information again is in the booklet. So if you are preparing for assessment and rating, or wanting to do a bit of a compliance check, or if you're working on your self-assessment tool, this is a great way to look at it, because it clearly links to the regulations, the laws, the national quality standards. So policies and procedures. Policies must clearly outline child-safe governance, complaints processes, information sharing, and also digital safety expectations. We saw a lot around digital safety come from September last year with the National Model Code. So we need to now have the documentation through our policies and procedures to back that up. Child protection, so allegations, misconduct, and reportable conduct. Clear complaints pathways, so transparent investigation processes. Documentation of complaints and outcomes. Policies must outline when and how information can be shared. So alignment with Child Safety Standard 7, clear guidance on sharing information with regulators, police and others, and making sure our policies are up to date and regularly reviewed. And here I have a clear list of policies that need updates. So when we look at our policies, this is a great overview of where you might need to check in to see if you're currently up to date. So in relation to our child protection policy, we need to add new training requirements, reporting pathways, and conflict of interest clauses. In regards to the training requirements, we will talk soon about the GECO training that's required. Incident injury, trauma and illness, we already looked at that it must have the staff signature verification for family contact attempts, so who attempted to contact the family, which we looked at the beginning of tonight's session. For recruitment and employment policies, we need to have the pre-employment checks, referee questions, and the OCG recruitment handbook references are really great for that. Our sleep and rest policy, again, addressing any hazards and making sure we're referencing the Red Nose Australia standards. For our child safe and wellbeing policy, add requirements for a child safe risk management plan and updated notifications. For grievance resolution, include conflict of interest management and updated responsibilities. For discipline and procedures policy, add conflict of interest clauses and align with new accountability expectations. For our educational leader, clarify acceptance procedures and documentation requirements, which we went through before, and records of educators working directly with children. So we must maintain updated registers and templates provided by the Early Learning Commission. And then we also had some new policies that needed to be introduced. And keep in mind, these lists are also in your booklet. So we have the protected disclosures, the whistleblower policy, which establishes confidential reporting pathways for inappropriate conduct, misconduct, or safety concern. So people who are reporting misconduct can feel really secure in knowing that they are protected. Because at the end of the day, we want to do whatever we can to promote people coming forward and reporting. For child safe recruitment and employment, we need to define screening, verification, and ongoing monitoring of educators and volunteers. So working with Children's Check and National Police Check. We've got our paramountcy principle, embed the child's best interest as a primary consideration in all decisions. But as we noted, that's not to be a standalone policy. It needs to be reflected in all of our policies. Conflict of interest policy, we need to clarify responsibilities and reporting when personal interest may affect professional judgment. Infant sleep and non-sleep incline register. So maintain a register ensuring all infant sleep products meet mandatory standards, and expanded conditions of approved providers. So document compliance with new provider accountability and governance requirements. In addition to this, Family daycare services must have 8 distinct policy areas, and this is in relation to Regulation 169, each with clear procedures that demonstrate how you assess and approve homes, how you recruit and monitor educators, how you maintain mandatory registers, how you ensure child safety in private residence, how you manage visitors and household members, how you support educators with training and information, and how you approve and supervise educator assistance. So they're the 8 key areas that you really need to be focusing on when you're reviewing your policies. Okay, we're getting through it. The next area that we're going to look at is home safety. So our environmental safety. And this links clearly to Regulation 116, assessments of family daycare residents and venues. So of course we require safe, hazard-free home environments for children. And we've got our NQS links there. So coordination units must ensure family daycare homes are safe, well maintained, and free from hazards. Regular home environment safety audits, so verification of safe setup, supervision zones, and hazard controls. Identification and control of risks, so safe storage of chemicals, medication, tools, sharp objects, and management of water hazards, and that could include pools, ponds, dams. Safe management of pets, so clear separation from children when required, and there needs to be evidence of a risk assessment and hygiene controls when we're looking at pets. Vehicles must be safely stored and inaccessible. Tools, machinery, and equipment must be secured, and no access to hazardous environments. Documented evidence of audits, clear hazard management strategies, and demonstrated daily child safe practice in the home environment. There's also been an update to the definition of usual place of residence for family daycare. So from April 2026, the definition of family daycare residence was updated under the national law. It refers to a residence where a family daycare educator educates and cares for children as part of family daycare, including the family daycare educator's usual place of residence and the usual place of residence of another person. So this provides clarity around where family daycare can legally operate and ensures all approved locations are clearly captured under the law. So to have a little bit of a look at this about what this looks like in practice, what do child safe environments look like in practice? So a commitment to ensuring every child's safety, welfare and well-being is paramount in all decisions. So there we've got our paramountcy principle. Ensure all staff complete child protection training as required under the law and up-to-date records are maintained. Maintaining a register of child protection concerns, which we looked at, ensuring that staff know how to report any concerns they have, conduct child protection risk assessments, and maintain accurate daily attendance records. So all those things that we've looked at tonight so far, all piece together the big puzzle of safety. It's not just one action or one document. It's all these little things that we're looking at that add up. So policies must include procedures for undertaking regular and service-specific child protection risk assessments. So these risk assessments should identify potential risks to children's safety and well-being or outline control measures to mitigate those risks across physical environments, routines, excursions. So we're all used to doing risk assessments when we do excursions or when we do slightly higher risk activities like water play or cooking experiences. So a child protection risk assessment is very similar to that, but looking at it with a child protection lens. So when we come to updating our child safe environment policies and procedures, services must update their child safe environment policies and procedures to include a clear commitment that children's safety and well-being are paramount, how they're going to meet child protection training requirements, that we've got that register, and that we've got clear reporting steps in place. We also saw a change in powers of entry for investigation of family daycare services. So from the 27th of February this year, we saw that authorised officers are now able to enter and inspect areas of a family daycare service premises beyond the part of the residence where education and care is provided. So basically covering the whole home. Now, this is allowable when inspection is required to assess or monitor compliance with requirements relating to the safety, health, and well-being of children, or the authorised officer reasonably suspects that an offence has been or is being committed. So now they are able to access beyond the areas that are part of education and care. We also see in Regulation 116 that the education and care regulations state that the approved providers must assess all family daycare residents and venues before education and care is provided. So for any new services opening up, the approved provider must review the venue prior to it being opened for care. Okay, so also from April this year, we saw that every approved provider and service is required to have a protected disclosures policy that clearly explains how disclosures are managed and provide regular training and awareness sessions to staff on the importance of protected disclosures and the protections available to those who make them. So this reform will help staff understand their responsibilities and feel better supported to raise concerns safely. So this really came down to protecting individual staff members if they need to disclose something. So when we look at specifically for family daycare updates, so the protected disclosure reforms, family daycare educators are now protected when reporting concerns about household members or coordination staff. So schemes must provide clear guidance on reporting pathways and protections. Clear reporting channels provided by the scheme. So the educator must know who to report to and how. And options for confidential or escalated reporting. So if you decide that you need to go a step higher or you want to maintain it private, there need to be steps for that as well. Schemes outline investigation processes, documentation and follow-up procedures, and transparent handling. Confidentiality maintained, so non-retaliation measures in place, so support provided during and after reporting. So for example, you can't have your service taken away just because you've upset someone through your reporting. So confidentiality is maintained and regular staff training is required. So your service needs to be providing you awareness sessions and they can decide what that looks like. It could be done in-house, it could be done with an external training company, but making sure that you know what your protections and responsibilities are so that you feel safe. And again, that promotes that speak up culture. On the screen here, I've got a protected disclosures model policy. So this is a sample policy that is a great starting point. If your service doesn't currently have this policy in place, these model policies are great to use. And this was developed by the Early Learning Commission. to assist providers and leaders in embedding these practices, because it can be very overwhelming, especially if you feel like you've only got a basic understanding of what's required. So you could take a model policy like this one from the Early Learning Commission website and tweak it to suit the context of your service. So we can see there that there's a bit of an outline about the training and awareness sessions that must be provided. We see it can be provided and delivered by the service or a third-party company. And services should remind staff about the importance of and the protections provided to persons who make protected disclosures. So this could be done through general staff discussions if you have team meetings, reminding staff about the importance of disclosures, posting information on staff notice boards, or providing e-learning. Another really good idea down the bottom there, services should ensure that the protected disclosure policy is incorporated into staff induction packs for new staff at their commencement. So we really need to make sure that staff are aware from the beginning of their journey with our service. So child safe recruitment and ongoing suitability. Now, child safe recruitment is a huge topic. We could probably run a separate session just on the importance of recruiting and how to do it really well with a child safe focus lens. But just as a brief overview, obviously coming in from April 2026, approved providers are required to ensure their staffing policies outline clear child safe recruitment and employment practices. This is such an important step because this is really that first barrier to ensuring that we only employ suitable people. So to assist with the implementation of this reform, the Commission also developed a child safe recruitment, induction and training toolkit. Now, I highly recommend, even if you've already got clear processes in place, to download and have a look at this toolkit and just do some reflections around, are there any gaps or is there any room for improvement in your current practices? Now, the toolkit includes a sample policy, child safe recruitment checklist, an interview checklist, and also a referee check template. Because a great thing to do is to ask child safe questions when you're doing those reference checks, and of course also in your interviews. So interview screening includes behavioural-based child safety questions. So when you're interviewing to provide someone a position, you should be asking them and testing their knowledge on child safe questioning. Referee checks are completed with more than one referee. It's always best practice to do a minimum of 2, and they also include child safe questioning. Induction includes child safe code of conduct and clear expectations. So from the very point of induction, they understand what's expected of them. We're all aware of the National Early Childhood Workers Register, so making sure we update the register within 14 days of a worker being employed, engaged or appointed, and also within 14 days of any changes. So all of our educators should be on that register. And just keeping in mind, working with Children's Check, initial suitability assessment for educators and household members. In regards to household member suitability, working with Children's Check requirements for family daycare services. The approved provider must also ensure family daycare assistants and all people aged under 18 or over who reside in the family daycare residence have a current and verified Working with Children's Check clearance, and we need to keep accurate records around that. Educators must notify the coordination unit of any new adult moving into the home. And again, they will be subject to regular reviews and checks. And then we also look at training. So training and capability. So once we have employed someone and we have someone working with us, it's an ongoing task to ensure that they have the most current knowledge. And that's why things like this evening or your professional development is so important. So from the 27th of February 2026, the New South Wales Early Learning Commission now has the power to direct nominated supervisors, staff, or volunteers to undertake specific training related to compliance issues. So this measure aims to prevent poor behaviour from escalating and support staff to build their skills and improve the quality of their work. So many family daycare services have been verbally advised by compliance officers and sector briefings that household adult members must complete child safe awareness as part of suitability and risk management, but it's not yet written or published in regulatory documents. But just keeping in mind that the Early Learning Commission can now ask staff or supervisors to go and get training if they see that there's gaps in knowledge or if they need to improve in conduct, they can actually direct you to go and get professional development. Okay, so just touching on our National Child Safety Training, so our GECO training. We have the foundations of child safe training, which was introduced, and I'm sure everyone is all over that now. And then we recently had the advanced training come out. So the advanced training is for people working directly with children or people in leadership and management, and that needs to be completed by the 31st of March next year or within 3 months of commencing employment. So our two main kinds of training now available, our National Child Safety Training, we have the foundation and the advanced child safe training. So the foundation of child safe training must be done by all persons with management of control, nominated supervisors, person in day-to-day charge. That includes family daycare educators, any other staff, volunteers, students, all need to do the foundations training. And then our advanced training, which came out recently, we've got until March next year to do that. And that's for staff working directly with children or people in leadership and management. And again, we need to be keeping those certificates and records. Then just to touch on, that's different. So our National Child Safety Training is different from our Child Protection Training. We've then got our Accredited Child Protection Training Unit, which is our CHC PRT 025, Identify and Report Children and Young People, and the refresher training as well. So the PRT 025 needs to be done by nominated supervisors, persons in day-to-day charge or family daycare coordinators and other relevant persons, including approved providers, educators, can do that. And that sits in the Certificate 3 as well. So if you've done your Certificate 3, you would have done your Child Protection Unit. And then it's recommended that the refresher training, which is the non-accredited, is done every 12 to 24 months or whenever significant changes are introduced to child protection law. So making sure every 12 to 24 months you're doing a refresher course. You don't need to do the full unit again. And that's because we know that in our sector, they like to change things all the time and lots of new information is coming out. So really important. It's a bit like first aid. If you're not using those skills every day, we can tend to forget. So it's a great way to refresh your knowledge and skills as a mandatory reporter. And our last slide for this evening before we go to our lovely interview is our coordination unit oversight. Now this links to Regulation 169 and aims to strengthen oversight, monitoring and governance responsibilities in family daycare. So this states coordination units must demonstrate strong oversight of family daycare educators, environments, documentation and child safe practices. So they need to, um, coordination units need to be very actively involved. They need to be attending services, they need to be in contact with educators, and all on a regular basis. So, what we want to see is an increase of frequency to home visits. So, regular checks of educator documentation, checking in on practice or observing practice, checking the home, monitoring child safe practices and compliance. They need to review incident reports. So, going through and again looking for patterns in anything. Is there something in particular that is regularly causing harm to children? Maybe something in the environment or a particular area in the home where children are having accidents or getting hurt. So, we don't know those things unless we're fully reviewing reports and documentation, checking attendance records, verification that educators maintain required records, so checking all that paperwork is done. Oversight of daily practice to ensure children's safety, so making sure that the educator's practice aligns with child safe standards, and evidence of consistent monitoring, so clear documentation of visits. So when the coordination unit is doing those visits, that you are documenting and demonstrating that you have been and what you did and what you engaged in. This also needs to cover how a service will manage and monitor educators in remote locations as well. Very important. Okay, well, just as my voice is running out, we have our fantastic interview. So this is with Deb Philpott, and she is a family daycare coordinator and secondary nominated supervisor from Lake Macquarie. So I'm going to share this interview now. I hope you enjoy it. And then after the interview, we will come back for questions, and that wraps up our session for tonight. So enjoy the interview.
Hello and welcome. My name is Susan Bryant and I am here to introduce to you Deb Philpott, who is the Family Daycare Coordination Manager. Deb, is that who you go by? No?
I'm the coordinator.
Coordinator, there we go,
Coordinator.
of Lake Macquarie City Council Family Daycare. I very much appreciate Deb joining us today and hearing about all the new reforms. Now, the national collaboration were held most recently after serious incidents occurred relating to child safety in our sector. And after following an independent review, it was determined that stronger protection is needed to protect our children, hence the reason why the child safety reforms have come about. I guess the bottom line to these reforms are to keep in our mind at all times as professional educators that every decision we make must put the child's safety, rights, and best interest paramount. Children first, always. So, Deb, over to you. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. So I've been in family daycare for about 28 years. First as an educator, started my own service and going on to upskill. I then became a coordinator with a service, and yeah, family daycare has absolutely got under my skin, and here I am coming up for nearly 30 years. So I've seen many changes, and most of them, for very good reason. But yeah, change is a challenge, more so for some people than others.
Absolutely agree. And I too, Deb, will share that I've been in our sector for over 30 years as well. And I'm a true advocate for the work that you guys do in family daycare. So thank you for all that you do. We might start there. And I think now we all have an understanding as we're moving through as to the why and where these new reforms have come about. But there will be significant changes, and there have been significant changes. And I ask you, Deb, what do you see as the most significant change to the new early childhood education and care reforms for family daycare educators, and why?
Well, we know that we have been implementing these changes since September last year, and they've actually been over 30 reforms that have been released. So, of course, the first round we saw the paramount consideration with children's wellbeing being at the heart of everything we do, and the banning of vaping substances and devices, and educators having to display, educators and services having to display the service compliance and quality history. And again, that is for transparency. Some of the subsequent changes that have been rolled out and that have probably had the most impact on educators has been the approval of educator residences, the spaces not typically used to deliver their family daycare service, but those having to be inspected. And understandably, that has been difficult for some educators to navigate when getting that balance between home and their business can be difficult. But if they have those separate spaces, that does help. However, now there is that requirement for service staff to inspect those personal spaces and ensure the space around their service is safe and suitable. So that has certainly been a challenge. And of course, the restriction on personal devices, that has been a significant hurdle for educators. It's required financial investment, and that's something that everybody navigates at their own pace. So for us, we've worked gently with educators to support them along that process, to be able to implement that and get to the point where they can have that service device separate to the personal device. And we know some of the information, the guidance information that has come down has been very slow to be delivered. And so that has meant that implementation has been in a very slow and controlled way. And sometimes that misinformation doesn't help when you're dealing with change.
And I guess exactly what you said, the misinformation, the misinterpretation of information, or the blurred information can cause angst and worry and anxiety. Change does bring uncertainty and fear, and they are very true, valid feelings that educators may be feeling right now. You and I have been in the sector for a long time. We have been through enormous changes, which to us brought fear, anxiety, the unknown, the worry. And we really respect that people may be feeling this, but touching base with professionals, so touching base with your family daycare coordination unit, touching base with professionals around you will help guide you through that.
Absolutely.
If educators are feeling really uncertain, confused, worried, fearful about adapting and getting to know all of these changes, which do at times feel like has been a huge dump of information on us in the sector, what advice would you give those people that are feeling that way?
Really, just talk to coordination unit. We are there to support educators. That's our role. So to guide them, to advise them, to mentor.
Mm.
Everybody is at their own point in time of where they're implementing change, and we all deal with change differently. So it's absolutely about tailoring our support to individuals. And we love questions. We want those questions. That's how we nut out, the best ways to do things. We don't get all of that guidance information straight away. So having meetings, we've had catch-ups online with educators as information has trickled through, just to debrief some of those questions, demystify some of the things. It's really about talking, reviewing your documentation, asking if there are any requirements that impact specifically certain setups. And just identify that questions are professionalism. They're not a weakness.
Absolutely. There's no such thing as a silly question. And no doubt the
Absolutely.
question that you might ask someone else is wanting to ask the same question or get
That's right.
that information
Yes.
from the Family Daycare
Yep.
Coordination.
Yes.
So I guess the bottom line is, educators, you are not alone. You've got the true support of those
Absolutely.
around you, but go to
Absolutely.
reputable professional sources to get your
Yep.
information and
Yep.
guidance from.
That's
There
right. And
are
I think
many
that's what
Oh, sorry, Deb. Yes.
I was going to say. I think that is part of the reason why things have stretched out a little bit, is because we
Yeah.
have waited for the accurate information to
Mm.
be delivered,
Mm.
rather than just being reactionary and interpreting how we think.
Yes.
It's like, let's hold off. There is supporting information coming.
Yes.
Let's wait for that. Let's get it right the first time.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are tweaks to be made.
Yes.
But yes, let's not just jump in and be reactionary.
Absolutely. And there is a lot of great information on the ELC website. There's webinars being held, but also be guided by your Family Daycare Coordination Unit's policies and procedures. They know best and they will roll out these
Yep.
changes that are coming.
Yep.
Because as you mentioned,
Yep.
we have had quite a few changes from
Yes,
September
we have.
to the most recent ones on the
Yep.
24th of April of this year.
Yes.
But Deb, I guess it's known, it's a fact that there is misconception out there. There is blurred information being passed along. Is there one misconception that you've heard about the new reforms that you would like to clarify with everyone today?
I mean, you hear it all the time. Oh, they're trying to get rid of family daycare.
Yes.
Let's put it out there, the elephant in the room.
Yes.
That isn't the case.
Yeah.
I truly believe there will always be a place for family daycare. It is a model of care that works. I chose it for my children. I chose to be part of it because I truly believe it's a great care model. The reforms are aimed at strengthening the systems
Yes.
that safeguard and prevent situations where children can be at risk. And we have to remember that it's about the systems, not the people. So yeah, it's about preventing harm, identifying any risks earlier. So yeah, really about increasing public confidence and the transparency of family daycare. We know educators are vulnerable. They work in isolation
Yes.
in their services. So we want to have the systems in place that support them to do what they do so well. And that is delivering quality education and care to children.
Which you have done for many and many of years. And I too am a true advocate for what you do in family daycare. So
yeah,
we
and
need
that's what
you.
we want to showcase that.
Absolutely.
But we do have to get the structure right.
Yes.
And we do have to have all of those supporting systems in place to be
Yes.
able to demonstrate
Yes.
the great work that our family daycare
Yeah.
educators provide.
They absolutely do. And again,
Yeah.
thank you for all that you
Yeah.
do, and
Thank
each and
you.
every educator
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
family daycare. Thank you.
And I was just going to say, Susan, that
Sure.
with educators working alone, we can't rely solely on trust. So that's why for them to be reassured that they have the backing of their service,
Yes.
but also the industry.
Yes.
And that's about having everything in place, because we
Absolutely.
want them to feel proud and confident of what they do.
Absolutely. And continue that care for the children that has so
Yes.
many benefits.
Yep.
So, your role of overseeing up to 35 family daycare educators at Lake Macquarie City Council Family Daycare Coordination Unit, how are you preparing your educators to meet the new requirements of the reforms?
It's really been about sharing information, accurate information. So not speculating, waiting until we have details, and really supporting educators with those changes, providing them with the tools, those tip
Yeah.
sheets, those guidance, quick reference tools that, again, when they're delivering quality education and care, they can refer to that information to guide them, and not just, I guess, a flounder, because they're doing so many things at once.
Right.
They're providing care for children, meeting their personal needs, program planning, documenting. There's so much to it. It's a huge role. And, to have all of these changes on top of that. And I guess the other key thing that I feel we have done to help prepare educators is to really be that mentor for them. We all need to debrief, and, that professional mentor and coaching has really gone a long way just to keep educators moving in the right direction through these
Yeah.
changes.
So
Because it's
lovely
been
to
a
hear
long
that.
while, and it can be tiring to continue. It is draining, and we want their
Yes.
focus to be on the children.
Yes,
So yeah,
absolutely. Don't
that's
forget the key focus is staff and
absolutely,
children. Preparation is the key here, and small steps. Small steps will get you to a greater outcome. It will be okay. There have been a lot of
yes,
new changes. It was informed that they will educate and they will want to see now implementation into daily practices of these new reforms.
yeah,
But again, small steps
yes,
in keeping in focus the reason why that every
yes,
decision we make must always put children's safety, rights, and best interest at the forefront of what we do, which is all in line with the paramountcy principle, one of the new
yes,
reforms from
yeah.
April of 2026. What challenges do you anticipate you're going to see or have been faced with when implementing these new reforms with your educators?
I don't think it's the reforms themselves. I just think it's been the pace at which they have been released. It has been
It's
overwhelming.
big.
It's huge. It is
Yes,
huge.
yes,
And, again, educators, some of them are fortunate to be in educator network groups, to support each other. And obviously they have their coordinators to support them, and the coordination unit. But yes, a lot of them are working on their own,
mm,
and
mm,
they are professionals.
mm,
Educators ultimately want to do the right thing.
mm,
But when you're faced with change, your confidence is undermined and you question, am I on the right track? And that can be really destabilizing. And we know some of these changes have had an impact on families, the educators' families. There's been financial burden.
Yes.
And that has had to be considered. Everybody's in a different situation. And again, that's why we've tried to implement these changes gradually, keep moving, but be respectful of where everybody is at individually. And also considering how these reforms might look in day-to-day practice. It's all right reading, we've now got to do this, we've now got to do that, but how will that look in my space? And things may look slightly different from educator to educator. Everybody's, some educators have families in their home, family members. Others may be a single person living at the home. So it has less impact on others. But it's really been about taking that individual approach to support our educators, and knowing that people adapt differently to change.
Absolutely.
So being respectful.
Absolutely. And Deb, if we think back and reflect on our days in our sector, we've been through Keep Them Safe, which strengthened the child protection reporting and threshold of reporting and implementation of MRGs. And we've been through the EYLF. We've been through the changes to the assessment and rating and the national quality standards. We've been through an implementation of national law. We've been through change. We've survived.
We've seen
and we
it
know
all.
that every educator out there will survive these new reforms.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
At the end of the day,
as I said,
child comes first, and that's the focus of these reforms. So
that's right. And as I said, every educator wants to do the right thing. They are professionals. They're proud of the services that they deliver. And our role is to support them to continue to do that. So, yeah.
Deb, you've given us a lot of information and a lot of guidance and information to family daycare educators. Is there anything else that you would like to close with or on today?
I think just to, reiterate, if educators are feeling overwhelmed, reach out to your service. That is their role to support you. And, as a coordinator and being fortunate to be part of a team, many a time we have supported each other within the staff. So it's been overwhelming for everybody. So don't think it's just you. And don't think you're on your own. So we've all come through this. We know change is inevitable, and this is not going to be the end of it.
Yes, absolutely.
But keep going.
We will be
keep
okay.
going. Yes, absolutely. And there are some beautiful educators who are doing a wonderful job. And again, the children are benefiting, and that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. It takes a village to raise a child, and it takes an enormous network and support to continue the amazing work that the family daycare educators are doing for us.
Yes.
The children need you. We need you. And again, Deb, thank you for your wonderful insights. And
My
educators, keep doing the amazing work that you do.
Definitely.
Each and every day. So thank you. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you. Thank you.
What a beautiful note to end on. Such a lovely interview. and they're spot on. You guys are doing an amazing job, and it's very understandable if it does at times feel overwhelming. You can see from tonight's session, it is absolutely a whirlwind of information. So I really thank you for taking the time to come tonight after what was probably a busy day, whether you were working or not. And your attendance tonight just shows how dedicated you are to making sure you're providing the best quality. So thank you so much for coming. Again, don't forget to download the booklet because it is a fantastic summary. It's been beautifully published with all the information from tonight. So I really encourage you to download that booklet and keep it, and rest assured that as new information comes out, I know we're expecting more reforms, that New South Wales Family Daycare will continue to be here for you and continue to support you. You're not alone. And I can see by the huge turnout tonight, we had over 1,000 educators join us, that we're all in this together. And at New South Wales Family Daycare, we really look forward to continue to support you. We've got a couple of minutes left. We've gone right to time tonight. It was a big session. If you do have any questions, please drop them into the chat box and I will try to get to a couple. So I do have one question here regarding the increased frequency of home visits from leadership. What is the required time between visits? So the required time between visits hasn't been specified in the new reforms or the regulations. It's just said increase. So we just want to make sure that there's a strong connection between educators and the service providers, the support team, the educational leader, whoever's part of that, that they are regularly visiting the services and they're actively engaged in checking documentation and engaging with educators. But in terms of the time between visits, that hasn't been specified. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, just in case you missed it, we do have a closed Facebook group, Pity in Your Pocket. If you jump onto Facebook and type in Pity in Your Pocket, we will certainly love to welcome you onto our Facebook page. And that's a great space where you can share your practices, ask each other questions. It's a great space. You will get your certificate of participation for tonight in the coming week. And if you can take a minute to fill in the survey, we would greatly appreciate that. All right, it doesn't look like there's any more questions, so I will leave you this evening to enjoy the rest of your evening. Again, if you have any questions later on, you're always welcome to send us an email, and I'm sure we will see you soon for our next session. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely night.
Thanks for participating in this episode of PD in Your Pocket. This series was produced on the lands of the Wangal and Gadigal peoples. If you'd like to watch or listen to other episodes in this series, or find out more information about this program, you can find us at our website at nswfdc.org.au/PD in Your Pocket.